good morning. It's good to have you here.
Good morning, Bossen.
So who cares about whether you get an investment grade or is a junk rating? Who really cares?
Well, definitely investors that are looking to buy into these bonds, it's one of the metrics they look at when trying to decide if to go for these bonds or not. So these credit rating agencies such as Fitch and S&P and Moody's, they sort of give an independent view as to the probability of these issuers meeting their debt obligations. So they sort of analyze the fundamentals, thorough analysis of these of factors that can sort of affect these issuers in meeting their debt obligations. So typically, you have your investment grade. Yields here are sort of lower than that you have for the non-investment grade. So on the investors' part, because they are parting away with their money, they have to look at this factor. Not only this, they also look at other factors, but it's also a metric that they also consider when deciding whether to buy a bond. So typically, yields in the investment grade are typically lower than what you will obtain for the non-investment grade.
In other words, if you're a junk-rated bond, for example, or sovereign, investors will be asking for more?
Yeah,
the risks are much
because
higher.
they are parting away with their money. There's also the risk that you might default in the near term. So in order to compensate for this risk, they sort of require more return on this investment. It's sort of like a guidance, but then again, this is not the only factor that they look at in assessing whether to buy into a bond.
The latest Moody's downgrades of Nigeria. What are some of the key issues? Nigeria has already contested the premise upon which the downgrade to B2 was achieved 3 days ago. What's your take on this?
Well, Moody, they downgraded Nigeria during the week. They gave two possible reasons, which are one of which is we have a robust revenue base. I mean, given the downturn in global crude oil prices in 2014, in the second half of 2014, it sort of exposed the economy's structural imbalance. I mean, we saw that the economy was heavily dependent on crude oil and in order to shore up its reserves. And we saw the resulting FX crisis and thereabout. So given that the government since that time has sort of they've put a lot of effort in sort of diversing our revenue base, but they're saying that there's not much that is seen to be there, which is quite true. We've as of half year 2017, we were short of projections for non-oil revenue as well as oil revenue. So this is one of the factors that the Moody gave for the downgrade. Then the second one is high interest payments as regards to revenue as well as deficits, which is quite true. I mean, for a couple of years now, we've run deficits in order to pursue an expansionary budget. And in the near term, it looks like this is going to be the trend. I mean, we need to sort of stimulate the economy and get it back on track.
Once you have a rating decision, investors in what you call the high yield securities begin to think, what do I do with this rating? What has been the discussion over the last 3 days as far as this in Moody's concerned, the impact on the fixed income market, Nigeria's government borrowings?
Okay, for the Eurobonds, now what we noticed was that there was sort of like a neutral impact. We did not see any potential shift in sentiment towards these bonds. As of Wednesday, when the news was announced, we saw yields actually fall on these bonds, and some of them actually closed flat. So there wasn't any major reaction. I mean,
we're just looking at their existing Eurobond.
Yeah.
If you look through the Bloomberg terminal.
Yes.
You mean there was no significant impact on Wednesday?
Yeah, a number of these bonds closed flat, and a number of them actually declined. Yields on these bonds actually declined, which is sort of a bullish
sentiment. So rather than yields go up because we got a downgrade, yields actually went down Wednesday.
Marginally
down. So which means, based on one or two analysts, that this downgrade by Moody's on Wednesday of Nigeria's sovereign rating was of no consequence, quote unquote.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the downgrade could have come as early as 2016 or 2015 when the economy was severely challenged. I mean, if you look at 2017, there has been a lot of improvement in which the FGN also cited. I mean, GDP, you look at PMI numbers, you look at FX, there's a bit of convergence between I and E window and the parallel market rates. I mean, things are looking up for Nigeria. I mean, we are not where we want to be, but definitely we've recorded some improvements during the year. And Q2 2017 GDP came out positive. Our outlook for the whole of 2017 is still positive. We expect growth to continue in the near term. So definitely these are what investors are sort of looking at in order to price Nigerian bonds.
So we're doing good. We're good. From the existing Eurobond, and I'm sure the corporates are not going to be significantly different. The corporate Eurobonds that we have out there with other banks like FBN, Diamond, Fidelity, GT, and Zenith. But again, we're going back to the marketplace, global DCM, and we're looking at about 5 billion. We're going to refinance some local treasuries and get some fresh money. So, do you think this rating by Moody's will be of any consequence?
Well, not exactly. I mean, if you look at sentiment for these investors are going to buy into SSA sovereigns or emerging or frontier market instruments. They sort of have different portfolios. So they have the ones for the lower risk and the ones for the higher risk. So this sort of like a strategic plan. They are quite aware of the risk associated with investing in this segment of the market, and this is what they are going to price into. So if there's anything there about that's going to be a downside risk to Nigeria actually raising Eurobonds in order to finance some of its operations. So technically, some of the risks outlined are they already priced in, as it were? Yes, they were already priced in, and this is unlikely to affect or have any potential shift towards sentiment for Nigerian sovereigns. In terms of sentiment, if you hit the markets tomorrow, tomorrow is Saturday, Monday, with this 5 billion fresh Eurobond, and part of it maybe diaspora bond, you think the sentiment is still positive for Nigeria to raise this money? Yeah, our outlook for these bonds are still positive. I mean, if you look at the bonds trading in the market, they are currently trading at a premium, which sort of gives you an idea of the sentiment that investors actually put into these bonds. If there's any downside risk, it's going to be that of global central banks opting for a tightening. I mean, US Fed is left with one more rate hike during the year and thereabouts. So it's unlikely that there's going to be any shift in sentiment or thereabouts. You would advise we go this Eurobond before December FOMC meeting? Well, the sooner the better. We need this money in order to finance operations and get the economy back to where it actually needed to be. My personal opinion, I think we should do this Eurobond 5 billion if we're going to do it quickly before the next meeting of the US Fed. Whatever happens then may have. We could just not want to wait till December. And now, as you look at the global space, financial market conditions are sort of supporting a tightening thereabouts. So we are not just looking at the US Fed, the ECB, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan, and thereabouts. So. Yeah. Okay, quickly, in 10 seconds, these ratings, does it spoke to anyone as far as local market is concerned? Naira bond, Naira treasury? Well, what is driving sentiment in the local market right now is actually investors' perception that there's going to be a near-term easing by the monetary authorities. So we've seen yields are sort of reduced in recent times thereabouts. We can see all the yields coming down there. So that is more of what the central bank will do on November 2021. Yeah. Do have a great weekend. Thank you very much. I'm trying to calm some of the nerves there about Nigeria's Moody's. You heard it there. Nigeria's Eurobond still trading decently good at the international marketplace despite Wednesday's downgrade to B2 sovereign issuer rating by one of the world's top rating agencies, Moody's Investor Services.